Women move humankind forward. We push scientific and mathematic developments. We reveal a nation's soul and shape culture. We sit in the halls of Congress and create law, and we bring peace to nations. Our place at the table in this country hasn't always existed. We fought for it. Now, some argue the glass ceiling is shattered. Others say it's only cracked. Either way, we know the list of who we are and what we do is growing. Tonight, Local 5 focuses on two innovative and original Iowa leaders while diving into the systemic inequities between women and men.
You're watching Local 5 News.
Celebrating women and women's history began as a week-long affair in the early 80s. By the latter part of that decade, though, the recognition grew to last a month. Throughout March, we have highlighted Iowa women whose work or contributions you've likely seen, but maybe didn't know who to credit. Local 5's Jackie Schmillen spoke with Johnston Mayor Paula Derenfield, the longest-serving woman mayor in Iowa.
But what made you take that step of wanting to get into a life dream of being in politics?
You know, I think it goes back to when I was in college. And when I went to college at UNI, I thought that, I wanted to get a degree in business. But I took a poli-sci course, and I had no idea what political science was, when I signed up for it as a general ed course. And once I took that course, I just became absolutely fascinated with political science. So that's kind of how it all started. From there, I did an internship with Senator Chuck Grassley out in Washington, D.C. He was actually a congressman. He was on the House side at the time. After I did that for a couple of years, I went over to the State House, our Iowa Capitol, and I worked as a staff director for the legislature for about 3 or 4 years. And then I got a call from the governor's office. Governor Terry Branstad was in office at that time, and he said, I have a position on my staff. Would you be interested in coming and working for me? So I did that for 10 years. I was Governor Terry Branstad's legal counsel for 10 years. And you can imagine that in that role, you're involved in everything.
So this was never the ultimate goal of being the mayor of Johnston?
Back when I was in college, I remember writing a note to myself, someday I want to run for office.
Okay.
But I don't know that I really saw myself in that position. It was my neighbors who said, we think you should run for office. So I did run. It was intimidating for me at the time because I had always worked for others, in those elected roles. So I had to put my name on the ballot, and that's a little bit scary. Yeah. You take some risk, and it's pretty intimidating. But I put my name on the ballot. I went out and I did the door-to-dooring, and actually loved it.
Is there anything of being a woman that you use in your role now that it helps you succeed? I've never ascribed to the notion that women are different than men in elected positions. I think we care about the same issues. I think I don't know that our viewpoints on, the big issues are that different. Mm-hmm. I think that, the same qualities that make men successful as elected officials are the same qualities that make women successful. I want to go back to being a woman one more time. Of being a woman leading a city that's growing so much, like the community of Johnston.
It's been really fun. One of the big responsibilities I believe that I have is going into our schools and showing little girls and little boys that women can be leaders too. We didn't see that so much, or I didn't see that so much when I was younger, but I think it's important that little boys and little girls see women in those kinds of positions. And so I take that responsibility very seriously.
Now, Paula goes on to say that public service is in her blood, so she will continue to be involved. Now, whether that will be in the mayoral role or in another role, that is yet to be determined at this time, but she will always be involved in some way.
I may run again for mayor and continue to, work with this community to see it grow and thrive, or I may look at another position. Public service is in my blood. I love it, and I think I do it well. So, it will always be something that I'm involved in.
Well, 15%. Take a look at that number. That's the percentage of mayoral offices women hold in Iowa, yet there are slightly more women than men in our state. Simply put, this section of the population doesn't have equal representation in local government. Tonight, Local 5's Sarah Beckman digs deeper into the data and why it matters to all of us.
This is the long list of Iowa's mayors, all 937 of them. Just 128 of the names are women. Our team wanted to know why. Was it just because women aren't running, or are they getting beat by men? So we looked at some more data from the Carrie Chapman Catt Center at Iowa State, and they tracked this kind of stuff. In their latest report, analyzing races from 2019, they found nearly 2/3 of the candidates for citywide office were men. So that tells us not a lot of women are running. That's what you see here in red. But listen to this. Women won at a similar rate to men, with 77% of women candidates and 80% of men candidates winning their races. So when women run, they have just as high a chance of winning as men do, at least at the city level. Then the question becomes, why aren't women running?
So looking at municipal government, I think one of the biggest problems is getting women on the ballot and challenging incumbents. In a lot of cases, you have mayors or city council members who've been there for a really long time, and so running against them seems difficult.
So intimidation is one big factor of why some women choose not to run. But there's another reason too.
Women's own kind of self-doubt is one of the biggest barriers to running for office. Political science research has looked at how qualified men and women think that they are to run for office. So looking at people who are equally qualified in terms of like education or professional background, and found that men are much more likely to say that think they're qualified and they've considered running than equally qualified women are.
Let's bring it all back to why this matters. Why should you care a woman isn't the mayor of your town, or on your local school board, or isn't representing you at the State House?
We live in a democracy, and that democracy is supposed to represent the people within it. And a little over half of the American population is women. Therefore, to be a representative democracy, I'd say we would need about half of the people in political power to be female, but also having more diverse groups making decisions. And that includes gender diversity, racial, ethnic diversity, differences in abilities. Those bring different perspectives to the table, which can lead to, which research shows lead to better policymaking.
Iowa does have a law on the books requiring an equal number of men and women to serve on local government boards. It's called the Gender Balance Law. It passed in 2009 and required all cities and counties starting in 2012 to have an equal number of men and women serving on boards, but there aren't any penalties for not complying. Empowering young women in Iowa to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and math has taken center stage in recent years. Organizations are working hard to push back on gender inequality that's still very evident in these subject areas. One of those is the University of Iowa's Women in STEM Ambassadors Group, which focuses on outreach for women of all ages looking to get into STEM careers. The club's leader says encouraging and supporting women in science-related disciplines is so important because it's easy to feel overwhelmed or even overlooked in these fields that have traditionally been male-dominated.
The big barrier for women entering and staying in STEM fields is this internalization of stereotypes that women aren't interested in or good at STEM careers. We're influenced at a very young age by what we see in media, and if girls aren't seeing themselves represented as engineers or scientists, they aren't likely to pursue those fields further down the road.
The mission of Women in STEM Ambassadors at the University of Iowa is to cut back on stereotypes and misconceptions and to get more young women interested in fast-growing STEM career fields. Lily says she's really passionate about this goal after struggling quite a bit herself in her first few years as a chemistry major at Iowa.
I felt very isolated and I doubted myself a lot. And, I think I just kind of got lucky with the people I was able to interact with, and that made all the difference in the world. You can do anything you want to do. What's most important is how hard you're willing to work for it.
And up next, the first woman elected to represent Iowa in Congress. Senator Joni Ernst reflects on her role and the challenges facing all women today. Then adding up the numbers, the shocking difference in pay between men and women. Well, Senator Joni Ernst was the first woman ever elected to Congress from Iowa, but certainly not the last. Since winning her first election 7 years ago, many more have followed. Local 5's Sabrina Ahmed sat down with her to talk about her historic role and to address the COVID-19 pandemic, starting with the disproportionate impact it's had on women. 2 million women have left the workforce in the last year to care for their children.
With schools not being open and the challenges that brings in making sure their children are being educated, when we have child care centers that have closed because there aren't enough children attending their facilities, it fell on moms to step back from their work activities and take over that role. Now, women are also impacted because many of them are in the service industry, working in restaurants or hotels or other types of venues that have been closed.
Of course, this relief package was just signed by the president. Not getting into the politics of the good, the bad, and the ugly of it, I want to talk about how this is going to help mothers. How will this directly impact women and allow them to get back to work if that's what they want to do?
So many of our small business owners they're women owned. They employ other women in those small businesses. And so providing a path forward within the Paycheck Protection Program was one way we were able to focus on making sure that women had access to that capital to pay their employees, keep their doors open, and that was continued on in this latest COVID package. You know, there are individual supports that will be going out, the economic kind of stimulus payments, those women will receive as well. That's important. Child care supports. And I worked heavily in this area, making sure that dollars are going to child care centers so that we can reopen those doors. But what I really want to see is more emphasis on our schools reopening as well.
Just talk to me about what you want to see our state do to help make sure that the children who are little babies today who are in school, they too see that they can do it.
I think it is really important that we show our young women, no matter again what their background may be, what their experiences may be, that they have a role and a purpose. And it is up to them to decide, what do I want to be? Do I want to be an astronaut? Do I want to be a senator? Do I want to be president? And it's possible, and we've proven that. You know, I was a young woman growing up on a very small farm in Montgomery County, learning from my own mother how to be extremely thrifty in the way I was raised. But her example was one that I carry with me today because she was a very determined woman, and she could, you know, take what little we had and make it seem like a 7-course meal, you know. So just showing me different ways of perseverance, both personally, professionally. It was really important to have that structure, the support from within the school system. Again, one of the reasons why it's so important that our children get back to school. If they don't have that support at home, that support needs to come from someone. But all of our women need to know and understand that these barriers are broken. They're not in place anymore. And you can do whatever it is you want to do. You've got to have the heart for it. You've got to have the drive. You've got to know that it's not going to be easy. But persistence pays off, and you can do it.
What's the #1 challenge you've faced to get to where you are today?
There are so many challenges, Sabrina, especially when you question yourself. And I think that is maybe the biggest obstacle that women, myself included, will have is, am I the right person? I think we question ourselves more than others will. Don't question yourself. If you have a passion in life, you should be following that passion. There are always going to be naysayers out there, but don't let one of those naysayers be you.
We have more from Senator Ernst on our website, including our discussion on domestic abuse, her fight to help victims who are suffering. Again, that is at weareiowa.com. We'll be right back. Well, women's pay lags behind that of men's. It's no secret. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the average American woman makes 82 cents on the dollar for the same work as men. Equal Pay Day brings awareness to our inequity. That day was yesterday, and the date is important. The date set for Equal Pay Day is not arbitrary. According to the American Association of University Women, it signifies how far into the next year a woman must work to make what a man did in the previous year. So let's break that down. Equal pay is based on what the average man makes in 1 year. January 1st through December 31st. But in order for the average woman to make the same amount as a man does in 1 year, she would have to work an extra 83 days. That 83rd day was yesterday. And in fact, there are multiple equal pay days. Asian American and Pacific Islander women's equal pay day is March 9th, meaning they'd have to work an extra 68 days to make what the average white man does in 1 year. Mother's equal pay day is June 4th. They make 70 cents for every dollar fathers are paid. Black women's equal pay day is August 3rd. That is 63 cents for every dollar paid to white men. Native American women's equal pay day is September 8th. They're paid on average 60 cents to the white man's dollar. And October 21st is Latina's equal pay day. Imagine working 658 days just to make what a man did in 365. Now, in the past 60 years, the female to male earnings ratio has increased 22%. Take a look at this graph from the U.S. Census Bureau. In the 60s, women made 60 cents to the man's dollar. We make on average 82% now. That may look like progress, and it is, albeit incredibly slow, but we're still missing 18% from our paychecks compared to the average man for the same work.